Welcome, everybody, to the Choose to Think podcast. Thank you so much for taking your time and joining us. I appreciate your support more than you can ever possibly know. And today is another reframe from Clubhouse. I'm joined by Candy Surrett. She's on the line with me, and we are going to chat about the toxic thought, quote, I don't have what it takes. And I want you to think about that just for a moment. I don't have what it takes. There may be other ways that you can actually verbalize that or paraphrase that, or maybe if you've ever thought or said, look, I just don't have what it takes, it means something unique to you. And it may mean that you're not enough. It may mean, well, there's Rico, and I love it. These late night recordings, he sleeps like most of the day, but there's this little point, like right about now of an evening when he is like, I need some attention now, mamita. And he's just looking at me, wagging his tail. And so hopefully I'm going to have to grab him in a second. Maybe he'll calm down a little bit. But at any rate, if you think about this thought, it's quite a self-limiting thought. I don't have what it takes. It may mean to you that you don't feel qualified and you don't feel credentialed. Maybe you look around to the left and to the right and you see everyone else doing what you would love to do. And you're like, you know what? I just can't cut it. I really can't do it quite like that. So I just don't have what it takes. Maybe you think of a past event in your life where you did something and it was an utter flop. Maybe you failed. Maybe you were let go from a job. Maybe someone said, I'm splitting the scene. I don't want anything to do with you. And, kind of left you thinking, gee, I just don't measure up. So we're going to look at that and try to figure out what's at the root of that. I've been pondering it now for at least for today, and as I was really thinking about what to chat about and just to bring value to your life and maybe validate some things that you've gone through, I thought, what is at the root of that? What's kind of causing that for someone to kind of conclude, I don't measure up, I don't have what it takes. And I wonder if some of that is fear, because sometimes we let our fear really drive us, and we start believing lies, and then maybe we're just discouraged, but we start making conclusions about our situation that kind of lead us down a road that is not very healthy and virtually debilitating. So I was trying to also think, I always like to relate to these toxic lies, and I'm trying to think, when have I ever engaged that thought, I don't have what it takes? I can remember teaching in South America, teaching ESL, and I was a little flabbergasted that I felt like I was such an experienced teacher, and this was just, I think, maybe 5 or 6 years ago. And of course, I've been teaching Spanish for over 2 decades and almost 3, and I really felt like I was just going to go into this program and dance around and be like the best teacher ever. And I was among the older echelon there, so I still didn't feel really intimidated. I just thought I had a lot to add, and that I would have skill sets that maybe some of the younger generation, these other newbie kind of teachers, didn't have. But I couldn't have been more wrong. And I can remember not being able to achieve this top little award that you get in your evaluation. It was like an S+. And I knew I was going out. Matter of fact, I've told this story on the podcast before. I knew I was going out on top. It was the best teaching experience I had had to date in that program. And it was weeks long, where we were teaching English and following the Cambridge University guidelines and their specifications and everything. But at any rate, I never did get an S plus, and I thought, well, I guess I just don't get it. I don't know what these other kids, right? I don't know what these other teachers are doing and how they're doing it and why I can't quite get there. So I do remember feeling really, really discouraged at that point in my life. I also remember just more recently, launching a business and saying, by golly, Lord, you have gifted me in certain areas and given me talents that I really just want to go out and contribute. I feel like I have something to contribute, and I want to help people, and I want to be an encouragement and an inspiration to them and lighten their load. And I felt so strongly about that, about using my gifts and talents. And some of that is coming from the teaching passion that I've had. I've always loved teaching. But I want it to make a difference in lives. And I want folks to know about Jesus and the impact that he's had on my life. But when you start out, like if you ever try to launch a business, and when you start out, you can really feel like, gee, I don't know what I'm doing here, and I don't know if I can cut this, if I can make the cut, if I can actually succeed at this. And so just that, kind of ponder that a little bit and think yourself, can you think of a time when you really felt this way? And I'm going to open the mic up to Candy, and then after we kind of share some of our own personal experience with this toxic thought and mindset, then we can kind of look at what might be driving it. And then after that, come up with some, what I call truth leads, or scriptural truths that we can kind of cling to and adhere to, and begin to replace the truth with the lies, or the deceptive mindset, or the toxic thought that we may have been engaging, so that we can kind of reverse things and pivot out of that toxicity and go into a new direction. So let me thank you so much, Candy, for appearing on the show. And also I want to ask you if this is something that do you remember ever thinking, I just don't have what it takes?
Thank you for having me on here, Victoria. I appreciate having an opportunity to share. Excuse me. As I was listening to you talk and share about your experience, I was thinking about a couple of years ago. I had a job change happen, not my choice, for the first time, and it was a big change in my life. And I just remember thinking, I'm in my 60s. How do you start over in your 60s? And feeling like, not really knowing what direction to go. So I did a lot of journaling and praying, but looking around, I think there's always, especially in the workplace, I'm just going to kind of point toward that because it's what I can relate to most currently. And, there's always people with a lot more experience, but there's always someone that's just starting out, and everyone has to come to that starting point. But I was just thinking, as you were sharing, I'm my own worst critic and enemy. I don't need anybody to criticize me or tell me that I don't measure up, or I'm, that I am less than. I can be my own worst critic and can be hard on myself. And so through this transition, I learned a lot that summer about putting trust in God, and there was a lot of other things that were going on around me and within my family. And so, I can totally relate to what you're saying. I think that, to just feel like I don't have what it takes, but, just realizing that we don't. A lot of times we don't have what it takes, but that's the beauty of, starting new things and new journeys, starting out coaching, for the first time, and trying to, like you said, launch a business. And and I think a root of a lot of it is fear. It's not only feeling maybe unworthy, but fear and just lacking confidence and looking around and seeing people comparison. I think it's all those things. I can never do what they do because, they've been doing this for 20 years and I'm just starting out. So, I can totally relate.
Yeah, and I think most of us probably can in one way or another. And, Speaking of comparison, we compare ourselves to those folks who are, like you just said, like, oh, I've been doing it for 20 years or whatever. And suddenly we expect ourselves to be at that same level. And it just doesn't start that way. Everyone who ever started a podcast, everyone who ever posted on social media, everyone who is attempting to do something, to learn something new, everyone who steps out there into the ring, so to speak, and is willing to take a stand for something, the first time they do it, and maybe even the 50th time or the 75th time they've done that, it's not that they're instantly a success. And I think we forget that. We compare ourselves to someone's highlight reel, or we compare ourselves to someone that maybe we want to be like, but we hold ourselves to the same standards, where if we would carefully examine how they started with maybe 0 likes on their first podcast. Matter of fact, I was listening to someone today talk about her first podcast, and she runs 4 7-figure businesses. But she said, and her podcast has been going now, I think she said for 6 years, maybe. She's got something like 700 and some episodes, just astounding. Anyway, this gal and her podcast, she said for her team, she wanted to show them, to illustrate to them that she started from square one, and that every single successful person starts from square one. Nobody has any kind of free pass on the path to learning and growing and developing. And she found her very first podcast, and she said, guess how many likes it got on social media? And the answer was 0. She had 0 likes on that. And she said that sometimes it can be just so defeating and so discouraging, but we bail out really quickly, and we forget that we're in for the long haul. Success generally is not overnight for most folks. It's a slow and steady grind, and if we just are consistent and we keep showing up, that's generally the recipe for success, for what we really want. But unfortunately, we get in our heads and we think, well, that podcast didn't get anything, or that blog post I wrote was a big flop, or gosh, I'm here posting on social and nobody's liking, or I can't seem to get the engagement. And then we think, I guess I don't have what it takes to do this, even though God has called us to contribute. He has called us to spread the good news. He has called us to be salt and light. He's tapped each of us on the shoulder to help others and to enter their lives and engage and demonstrate the faith that we have in Him. But I think we just kind of give up. We bail out too quickly because maybe we're not getting the response that we think we should be having, and we're forgetting to build our business and live our lives kind of in the future based on where we want to go, not where we are right now, especially as we start. Candy, you have anything?
Because we have internet, because social media, because it's so available, because I think that's really a lot of times where the comparison starts, because you can be fine but start looking through things and all of a sudden see someone that's way down the road ahead of where you are trying to get to. And that comparison thing it's huge. It really is huge. And there's so much in front of us. There's so much information. The days we live in, there's so much information. And people, especially in the time we're living in right now, a lot of people, starting online businesses and stuff. So there's so much comparison. Mm-hmm. And it's easy to get discouraged and want to think, well, there's a lot of people doing this, so what do I have to offer? And it would be easy to give up. It really would be easy to give up, because you're looking at somebody, like you said, who's further down the road than you are. And I think that's a dangerous trap when we begin to let our mind go there. Right there is right where those toxic thoughts are are racing around in a loop.
Yeah, definitely. And like you said, Candy, sometimes I think we forget the uniqueness of who we are. God created us uniquely, and the gifts and talents that He's given me, and it would be a shame if I didn't step out into those and attempt to utilize those and share those and magnify those, because He's gifted me with those. But those gifts that I have are different in ways from the gifts that you have. And so when we actually look to the left and look to the right and we think, this is saturated and there's no place for me here, it really couldn't be further from the truth, because there is a place. It's the you place, the you, Candy, you, Victoria, the uniqueness of each of us. There's a place for us, and we do have something valuable to contribute. And I think, I want to go back to the root. And I wonder if sometimes people throw in the towel because they're afraid. And I'm going to be the first to say that, I have to be mindful of not looking at the likes, not looking at the downloads, not looking at the subscriber number and all of those things, because sometimes I want to use those analytics not as information, but I want to use those as a way to kind of, I don't know, it makes me feel bad, because then I'm like, I can think that maybe I'm not doing as well. My perspective gets really small when I do that. And it's also very externally based. In other words, our worth doesn't come from what someone else says necessarily. Our worth comes from who God says we are. And He gives us value, worth as human beings, as He created each of us. He is the one who even proved just how valuable we are to Him by sending His Son to walk this earth and then ultimately to die for us in our transgressions so that we could have eternal life. But we forget that He's gifted us uniquely, and if we just focus on that and we say, you know what, today it's a new day. Whom can I serve today? Whom can I help today? That kind of question brings energy and life into our scenario and kind of keeps the wheels in the cog turning. But if we kind of look at all these external ways to, quote, evaluate ourselves, then we might really just say, I quit, I'm done, because I'm not, I don't have the downloads I thought I might have, or I this didn't happen the way I thought it would happen, or nobody's responding. And so those analytics I think are important, but I would encourage folks, instead of hiding behind those external tools that we can use to help us, but not defeat us, but just help us. And instead of kind of looking at that microscopic day by day analysis, it's much better to look at the overarching trend. And I know for a fact, I heard Pat Flynn, he's another entrepreneur I really like, and he was saying that every single YouTube channel, for example, has dips. And you think, what am I doing? What am I not doing? And boy, this is it. I'm done for now. And really, it's just the natural ebb and flow of any business, a rise and a fall and a rise and a fall. And so we can use those kind of analytics, and we can compare them among themselves. And, like, as far as the big picture, are we growing? Do we see some progression here in all of this and some growth, in which case we pull way back and our perspective gets to be much bigger. And instead of allowing those kind of analytics to defeat us, we can say, okay, it is what it is, and I'm going for the long haul here, not a get rich quick, not a 24-hour sensation, but instead I'm in this for the long haul, and I do have what it takes, and because I'm motivated by my desire to help others and to contribute and to use the gifts that God has given me. Sometimes I think we can throw in the towel because we get afraid. And if I quit, then I don't have to kind of manage my emotions about all this stuff, and I don't have to deal with it. I can just say, didn't work. And instead of showing persistence and running the race, and I'm sure we've all done this. I can remember I quit. I was on a swim team once, and I loved to swim. I loved the water. Grew up on we boated off a ski boat and that sort of thing. But we were at my family had a membership to a country club for several years when I was in junior high, I think it was, and I loved going out there. And I thought, okay, I'm going to do this. My neighbor, I would ride with them. We were all in the same, we belonged to the same club. And so I thought I'll ride with them. And their daughter was doing the swim team. And I just thought it would be great. I thought, I'm a decent swimmer. And oh my gosh, first of all, getting in cold water like that, I thought I would die. First thing is really early in the morning before it's just humidity hot and the sun's really out. That was so difficult for me. And then I just didn't really enjoy it. I didn't really like it. And I remember just telling my parents, I'm like, I'm quitting that. I'm not doing that. They let me quit that. And I didn't quit many things, but that's one thing that they did let me quit. And I was so grateful to not have to do that. But and maybe the life lesson, maybe I should have stuck with it. I don't know. I'm sure I may have been thinking I don't want to have it what it takes at that point. All these people were better, but I think I just flat out quit and let it go. I like swimming, but swimming for fun, not necessarily to compete. But I wonder if we just bail out, then we let fear really dictate a lot of our behavior. And it starts with our thoughts that lead to our emotions and feelings and ultimately to our behavior. So if you engage this thought, I don't have what it takes, I'm a failure, I can't do this, I can't cut it, it's nobody's appreciating me here, look at Sally, she's doing so well, and all of that stuff, those thoughts create emotions and feelings, and they're rooted in a fear. And they definitely, those feelings and emotions from the thoughts that that have been generated from the thoughts, then in turn cause us to make decisions and take actions on those. And maybe we have a dream and we say, nope, too hard, can't do it, when really that's, if we'd stuck with it, it might have been the very best thing for us.
You and I have been friends for a lot of years and kind of lost touch for a little while. And then I remember the night we reconnected and we had that first 3-hour phone call. Mm-hmm. And I just remember, just sharing my heart with you and just saying, I really want to help people. I mean, I've been doing it for years, but I want to learn more about how to coach and how to encourage and resources. And I just remember you saying, you're already doing it. It's your experiences that you've walked through that God can use. I just remember you affirming me in those fears. And, I just remember God saying to me, don't reinvent the wheel. Find someone who's doing this and come along beside them. And sometimes we just need that mentor or that friend or somebody to give us, we need those encouraging words from people around us, that know our story, that know our hearts, that know our dreams. I think we can make a difference in each other's life. But I'll never forget that first conversation we had, I think back in November or December, January, I can't remember now. But it was so encouraging because I'm feeling like there's no way I can do this. There's no way I can do what Victoria's doing. But in some ways, the things that God was calling me to do, I've already been doing. Yep. But feeling like just so inadequate, and it is fear, and it's low self-esteem and a lack of confidence. And sometimes you just need that little nudge from somebody saying, Candy, God can do this through you. He's going to help us with this. And that just made a lot of difference at that point in my life.
It comes down to underlining who God created you to be And maybe in that moment during our conversation, you just, sometimes things get kind of cloudy, or just one little comment from somebody can clear the air, so to speak. But yet I'm thinking back on that, and I'm like, oh my goodness, it was so easy to see that. But for you, kind of in the trenches, and as you were just stepping out and wondering, gosh, is this really the direction I'm going to go? I know my heart is longing to do this. God has called me to do this, but how on earth do I actually step toward that? But yet I could so easily see that you were already doing it. All you needed was, the scaffolding was there. You just needed to put okay, am I going to put siding or brick on this thing? And that's it. But it was so easy to offer a different perspective, because when we get in our heads like that, then we often don't see very far, and we don't see what other people certainly can see. And yes, I think your point about leaning on someone else, or having someone else there just to lock arms with and say, come on, let's follow this road. We're going, here we go. And then just do it, plowing forward with them. Even now, I have 2 mentors for my podcast and for my ministry, and they're my prayer warriors. And so sometimes I'll call them, or I'll send them, like a group text, and I'm like, oh dear, I'm really having a dip about this, and I'm really wondering about this, and I have this concern, and should I do this or should I do that? And they can offer a perspective to me that I just needed to hear, or I needed to be able to envision something a bit bigger than the way I was actually seeing it. So yes, sometimes if we're thinking, oh my goodness, Rico is coming unglued today. Riki, come here. Sometimes, let's see, I lost my train of thought.
People coming alongside.
Yeah,
Mentors, your mentor.
yeah, and we do need each other in all of this, and just at the moment, there have been moments when I've even thought, now that I've been I'm in my 2nd year podcasting, and really trying to put material out there and provide value and inspire and encourage and teach people how to, this 7-step process that I've learned about taking thoughts captive, and why it's so important, because I really do want people to live their best lives, yes, but to really live their best thought lives. That's where it all starts. And I have such a passion to share that, because it made a humongous difference in my life and gave me so much joy and freedom that I've really never had before. And that's worth talking about, and it's worth sharing, and it's worth, I have that, I'm compelled to do that, and I feel that, and I know that God is with me in all of that, and he's given me that desire even. But there have been times when I've thought, writing something or whatever I've done, or maybe I just gave a presentation, I'm like, oh my goodness, that was like, I'm sure I said everything wrong, or I couldn't get things right. Once, I'll tell you this, once I gave a presentation, the gentleman asked me to speak on one thing. Well, that's what I thought I was speaking about. But he actually ended up changing the title, because he said, you really didn't speak about that. You spoke about this topic instead. And I was like mortified, because I thought, oh great, my presentation style wasn't the best, or I didn't do what he was asking me to speak about. And it, and then I thought, and that was earlier on, and when I was just starting to try to present. And so it really was a bit of a blow. But the position I take now is it's what you and Shelby and I talk about a lot, about releasing the outcome, and just, I'm going to pray through things. I'm going to show up. I'm going to be consistent, and I'm going to do my very best. I'm going to be imperfectly perfect, or perfectly imperfect, however you want to put it. We really just are, like you said a moment ago too, we're so hard on ourselves, and we can be our own worst critics, when really we're in the trenches and we're doing our very best. And by golly, if we're willing to take the risk and to do that, then I think that says a lot about who we are, and our heart's desire to help others, because we're kind of like, sometimes Rico, we have these little ropes he tugs on, and man, he's not letting go. He will not let go. And I'm like, I want to break his teeth out of his jaw. I have to be so gentle with him because he won't let go. And that's kind of the way we are. We run that race with persistence, and we run as if to win. We don't run like to win the prize. We run in a way that we win the prize. And I was just reading about that today, earlier, as I was crafting one of my devotionals for the book. And it's not that you're running to win the prize. You're running in a way that you'll win the prize. There's a little subtle distinction there, and I really enjoyed that thought. But the point is that we do things that allow us to be, quote, winners in those areas. And what I was going to say also about leaning on our friends and our mentors and our coaches and having someone else to be a cheerleader for us is that, we need that. And for some reason, I keep forgetting this point I'm trying to make, Candy. It's not coming. I've had it twice now, and then it escapes me. So maybe the Lord doesn't want me to say, oh, I know what I was going to say now. It's that we depend on Him, that He is the real source in all of this. And we may not have what it takes. Look at all the people in the Bible who thought that. Like, not me, no thank you. I'm thinking of Moses right now. But it's not about us necessarily. It's about our willingness. Yes. Are we responsible, and do we have responsibility? Yes. But in the end, it's what God can do through us as these little vessels and little trophies of His grace, these little clay pots that we are. He will be the strength. He has what it takes. He will lift us up as we humbly make our way through any of these life pursuits and the dreams that we have and those things that He's called us to do. So that was what I was going to say. When you and I chatted, you were already doing that, and you're so looking to God in all of this. You're not going to miss Him, and He's going to open those doors that you need to walk through, and you can't get stuck with, Lord, I don't have what it takes, because that's just, He has what it takes. So go ahead, Candy.
Well, as you were sharing, I was just thinking even further back, for some who may not have heard the other two podcasts, where we've been talking about these toxic thoughts, I remember pretty soon after I lost my son, he was 19 years old, I was in a church service, and I was just thinking about how I heard a pastor, speak something that my heart and my body, my soul, my mind just grabbed onto it. And he said, there's someone here who wants to give up, but there's a spark in the bottom of the ash heap. And if you'll allow God and the Holy Spirit to come in and fan the flame, He has something He wants you to do. And I was just sitting here thinking about that, and I thought, God, He speaks so many different ways, and the enemy comes in to tell us we're unworthy, and that we'll never make it, we'll never amount to anything, especially if you've had words spoken, if anyone's had those words spoken over them as a child, they replay in your head, and the enemy comes in and he screams and he shouts, but God comes in, Jesus comes in, He's a gentle man, and He speaks softly, and He speaks through people, through pastors. He speaks through His word. He speaks through our friendships, through friends, and our conversations, and He speaks in our solitude. And I think sometimes we're so accustomed to listen to the lies and the enemy's voice because it's louder sometimes. And like you're teaching, taking those thoughts captive. But when that pastor spoke that, my heart just jumped and my spirit jumped, and there was such a passion after that. I said, okay, God, if I'm supposed to be here, you have to show me a reason that I'm still here, because this is too hard. And he did. And I remember at that time, he gave me Isaiah 54, and he showed me, to work with youth, to work with international students, and to work with women who'd been divorced and who were brokenhearted and felt hopeless. And I just started taking a little baby step. I signed up for this international friendship family thing, and all of a sudden my house was full of students from the university, that were from all different countries. And on Friday nights, I just opened my home up, and so many stories like that. But I'm just thinking it came from that, listening to God's voice, and what he speaks about me is true, and his voice should be louder than the other voices around me, even my own voice. And I'm looking at a scripture too, Victoria. Jeremiah 17:7 says, blessed is the one who trusts in the Lord and whose confidence is in him. So our confidence shouldn't be in ourselves anyway. The message isn't that we shouldn't stress so much about our own weaknesses, because we don't have to be smartest or the most successful or productive. But what we do need to be is, we need to trust in God, and we need to be confident in him that he's working in our life, and trust him enough to know that he's leading us on our journeys and he's leading us on our path. And I just saw a quote. It just said, it's not our productivity that God desires, it's our heart. So, right, it comes back down to our heart, and what is his plan for our life, and where is our heart? And what thoughts are we entertaining in our mind that we shouldn't be allowing to stay there, because a lot of them are lies. They're not what's true about us and the person that God created us to be. And it says, he who began a good work in you will perfect it till the day Jesus comes back. He's always perfecting. We're not there. I have a lot of work to do, in my own life and my choices and my daily walk. But I'm farther than I was.
Amen. And Candy, you have so beautifully kind of summed it up and put the finishing touch even on this toxic thought. I've kind of had fun sometimes saying, okay, this is a toxic thought. I don't have what it takes. But in the end, it's probably true in some ways, because without Jesus, we don't. But because we have him, we do. So it's, what you've said, and I love the Jeremiah 17:7 quote, and it should be our trust and our confidence in him. But I will say that it's not like just because it's all up to him that we don't have some responsibility, or we don't have, I still have to kind of get at my typewriter and start typing and create the scripts and load them up and put this on you. There is still responsibility in our involvement there. And certainly with our dreams and stepping forth on those. In other words, if God says go forth, well, we have to move our feet and go, right? So it's this dynamic where we're trusting him, we're looking to him, we believe what he says about us, we believe what he says about himself and about our situation, and we know that he's created each of us with gifts, and that we are destined to contribute those gifts to others and to serve in that way. And when we find that sweet spot, and we can keep our blinders on to the enemy and those fiery darts that he's going to hurl at us, when we can just throw the shield up and say, no, I am not going to agree with the enemy of my soul. I'm going with God on this one. And then we can also say, okay, if you're feeling defeated and you say it's not at all spiritual for you, it's more like practical, then it may be that you're just exhausted and you need a little bit of a break. Maybe you need to get out of Dodge for a while. Maybe you need to just slow down or reprioritize. So there could be other reasons besides, just this root of fear that's kind of gripping your heart and preventing you from moving forward. It could be that you just need a little bit of a break, or you need a respite or a reprieve from what you are doing. And by the way, I would be the first as an entrepreneur to say these timeouts are so important. Getting out in nature, or just getting the vitamin D, enjoying the fresh air and sunshine, exercise, taking care of our bodies. It's not a one thing only. We are whole people. We have spirit, we have a body, we have a soul with our emotions. We're trying to take care of everything, not just one little area, but it's a holistic approach. And I know you and I both teach that, and we coach for that, trying to encourage someone to take care of the whole person, not just one little aspect of it. But it may be that if you're at the end of your rope and you're willing to throw in the towel, maybe you just need to have a break. So, Candy, I just can't thank you enough for taking your time and for showing up. I just keep marveling at how the listeners are getting such a taste of who you are as a coach and the encouragement that you share with them. And I know that maybe there's someone who wants to reach out to you even now. And I'm just so delighted that you're a part of the Choose to Think podcast, that you've been joining on the platform, and that you're practicing using your voice, because your voice is a blessing. Your voice is, you're speaking words of truth and life and sharing your light, and your voice needs to be heard. And I'm so grateful that you're becoming more and more comfortable sharing your voice, because what you share is really, really important. And I know I'm pleased, and I'm sure our Father in heaven is as well. So tell everybody where they can reach you.
Well, the easiest place right now is on Facebook. I'm under Candy Renee. And thank you, Victoria, for this opportunity to share, because I believe that as we share our story, I think every time I feel like I get an opportunity to share, my heart heals a little more. And I think he uses that. If you feel like you can make a difference in one person's life, if there's only one, then it was worth it, So thank you for this opportunity.
Amen.
I really appreciate it.
Oh, it's wonderful. Yeah, it's the audience of one, meaning God, but then also an audience of that one person you're helping. It's a win-win. It doesn't have to be, when we're really operating in those gifts and talents, that's almost enough to keep driving us, and knowing, and coupled with the fact that we're relying on the Lord for guidance and for strength, and that real, true inner strength, we're relying on Him for that, then we do kind of walk into a joyful place. And he, it's no wonder that it's healing every single time you share. It's another layer of healing that's added. Or would healing be added? Now that I'm thinking about that, it's another measure of healing that you feel that is so comforting to you, brings you comfort, heals your heart as well, and then puts you in kind of a joyful state, because it's God's way. Somehow all of this is what He would love His kids to do. And we know it's also how we overcome, by the word of our testimony and the blood of the Lamb. That's how we kind of become overcomers. On the Choose to Think podcast, I will encourage and empower you to engage and optimize your best thought life in practical, meaningful ways, so that you can live day by day in joy, peace, and God's purpose despite all externals. This is Victoria, and welcome back to the Choose to Think podcast. I'm so glad you're here.